You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. It's the TuAmigos Podcast with Carter and Jorge at DolphinsTalk.com.
Welcome to the TuAmigos. My name is Carter Melrose, and it is November 29, 2023. Not sure why the date matters. All I can say is that I am here for a solo show once again without Jorge, and if that makes you want to change the channel, then you do it, Buster. But I'm going to be spitting my truth either way. So, we have another week of what I like to call football that doesn't matter for the Dolphins and will not change the narrative of the Miami Dolphins at all. I hate the next coming couple of weeks. We have the Commanders, then the Titans, then the Jets again at home, and all three of those football games we should win. If we do not win all three of those football games, I will be pissed off chronically. If we only win by a little bit, I'll be pissed off chronically. If we somehow end up 11-3, my bad, and we go into, I think that would be Christmas at that point, or a Christmas Eve against the Cowboys at home, and end up losing once again to a team with a winning record, I will be on the edge of my friggin' seat when it comes to a couple of things that everyone in the media believes, that this team is a faker, that this team cannot beat good teams, that we're not built for January and February, that we are fun in the sun, and that is all. But before we get to the philosophical conversation that surrounds the rest of this season, and I have a lot to pick through, a lot to talk about, a lot of philosophy things to dribble into. Before we get there, I would like to say this. That last episode of Hard Knocks with the Jaelan Phillips situation was hard to fucking watch. I know that's everyone's take on the Hard Knocks episode. The beauty of being able to watch our team every week is, most weeks we win. So most weeks we get to watch, just get to watch the glory days from last week once again. This time around, though, I knew it was just not going to be that fun. When we lost Jaelan Phillips in MetLife, I think everyone had the exact same kind of feelings towards that game. That yes, we won, but for some reason, it was like one step forward, two steps back. It really felt like we had lost something huge, something immense going forward for our Super Bowl push and for this team. And watching that Hard Knocks, I don't know how you can't think anything else. So philosophically, I think this team has lost, and we're going to feel this loss. I know you're thinking, like, well, Jaelan Phillips is gone. I mean, he's a good player, but he's one of our best players. He really is, and we are going to feel this loss at some point this season. And, having a dominant pass rusher who was heating up, who was just scraping at being a superstar. He was just at the nipple. I guess that's not the way to say it, but the teat of being a superstar in this league. In Hard Knocks, I think Mike even told him, there was like a scene of Mike talking to him and saying, this is, a primetime game. You are a superstar, and the NFL, the entire world, all eyes are on you. There's no other game right now. This is primetime Black Friday football, and it's a New York market. Everyone's watching, and they're going to see, Jaelan Phillips as a superstar finally. And instead, what we had was one of the saddest, moments of our season. Watching that back when he popped his Achilles, and me and my girlfriend watched the Hard Knocks of it, and we also, watched the slow-mo of his Achilles popping. It's disgusting. If you haven't seen it, look it up if you'd like to. Don't look it up if you don't want to, because it is gross. But we watched that, and that moment of him realizing what he did almost immediately. I think I popped my Achilles. His teammates saying, don't say that, you're fine. And him starting to sob his brains out on the field as he's getting carted off. There is nothing more heart-wrenching than that. And the journey of Jaelan Phillips to the NFL to this point in his career is so rocky, up and down. You feel for the kid. And this is one thing I will say now that I'm watching, the NFL and the Dolphins alongside my girlfriend, is that I've realized that she has gotten a lot more invested now that she gets to see behind the scenes and the narratives and their personalities and, the struggles they go through. Like, of course, Jaelan Phillips, popping his Achilles would be sad. And, obviously you feel bad for him, even if you don't get the Hard Knocks footage of him crying. But what is more, what is more humanizing than watching this 24-year-old, I don't know how old he is, he's young 20s, just absolutely cry his eyes out about, there's nothing more humanizing. There's nothing more beautiful in an ugly way, I guess, being able to connect with these players on that deeper level. And so if there's one thing I love about football and I love about this Hard Knocks is that, love it or hate it, we're going to see everything. We're going to see all of the emotions, if it's highs, if it's lows. But that was hard to watch. Okay, so moving on. Like I said, I was going to get very philosophical going forward with the Dolphins. This is one of those weeks where I don't really want to talk too much about the upcoming football game. We're playing the Commanders. We're going to beat them, okay? I'm on the New York Times playoff prediction machine. Playoff prediction machines are where I spend, when I'm on the internet during, late December, November, I am just constantly on prediction machines, especially because the Dolphins are usually in a spot where they need a couple teams to lose, or they're 6-6, or, 7-5, wherever they are. But the Dolphins are 8-3 right now, and they're aiming down the barrel of 3 games in a row, where if they lose one of these games, it's a absolute embarrassment. So Dolphins win. I'm just clicking through these games real quick. Dolphins win. In 3 weeks, we should be 11-3. If we're not 11-3, we're not a very good team. 11-3 does this for us. It gives us a 75% chance of hosting the wild card. It gives us a 100% chance of making the playoffs. So if we win 3 games, we're into the playoffs, which is the nice thing. So it's very attainable, and we shouldn't have to worry this year, knock on wood, of will we make it? Will we not make it? Will we barely scrape in because the Patriots lost to the Raiders in the stupidest game in the history of the NFL? We are going to make the playoffs if we win the next 3 weeks. The thing to think about, the bye week that I've constantly obsessed over on this show, the bye week is a 24% chance for us if we win the next 3 weeks. Let's see if we win out. I want to see how that changes the chance of getting the 1 seed. If we win out, and we're not going to win out, I promise you we're not going to win out. The games, the Cowboys, Ravens, Bills stretch is so hard we're not going to win out. But if we did, we would only have a 78% chance. So in my head, I kind of believe that we're shit out of luck when it comes to the 1st seed. However, I think we end this season. I think we beat the Cowboys at home. I think we lose to the Ravens, and I think we beat the Bills. And I think we're going to end the season at, what would that be? 13-4, which would be just absolutely beautiful for a team like us. But going forward, like I said, the philosophical portion of this is we're getting into the portion of the season where the Dolphins fall off. I did like a lot of articles last year, and in the last couple of years about what most people call the same old Dolphins. And it's this syndrome of mediocrity that follows this team around when it gets to the later half of the year. I did the statistics when it comes to the Bills. The Bills are kind of the opposite Dolphins. Over the last 3 or 4 years, the Bills in the early part of the season, they're not very good. They're almost 500, in the early parts of the season. And then when it gets really cold up in Buffalo and the home games are grueling and those types of things, they get better and better as the year goes on. And the Dolphins are always reverse. No matter the year, they're always reverse. They're always really, really good in the beginning when they have that like 110 temperature home field advantage. And then when they have to play in the cold games in November and December and January, they actually just freeze their asses off. And I wrote this article after Flores was fired, and I was so heated up, and I did so much research on this because I've been a Dolphins fan since I was in diapers. Not since I was in diapers, probably a little older than that. But ever since I have been a Dolphins fan, we have, when it counts, let me down and let us all down. So I want to tell you what I wrote after Flores was fired. And this is just because we're going into this later part of the year when we usually fall apart. And I just want to hold us to a higher standard going forward. So here's what I wrote. And obviously this is very intense, and take it with a grain of salt. But our record over the last 4 coaching regimes, is 100 and 110, which gives us a .476 winning percentage, averaging a 7-9 to 8-8 record. So that was with Brian Flores, Adam Gase, Joe Philbin, and Tony Sperano. They were every single one of them, and most of them, all 4 of those averaged around 3 seasons or a little bit more, literally hovered around about a .475 winning percentage. All right, so let me keep reading. And honestly, this is a team and fan base that has been conditioned to think that moral victories are the same as true victories. And today, as an honest attempt to understand the premature departure of Brian Flores, I'd like to argue that the Dolphins have been swimming in circles for nearly 30 years. Not by fault of any specific general manager or coach, not because of our clear worthlessness at cultivating a franchise quarterback. No, I'd argue this organization is mediocre to its core, with a team culture and atmosphere that perpetuates passable and ordinary results. The same old Dolphins is not only true for this season, it perfectly describes the self-defeating culture that Stephen Ross and company unknowingly have built Hard Rock Stadium to embody. And I believe in that spirit, the Dolphins fired Flores to again attempt to reestablish the excellence of Don Shula and to make it clear to the team that moral victories are not good enough. And obviously this was like in a very dramatic part of my life after we fired Flores after a winning season and going to the playoffs, whatever it was. But here's what I will say. The 100 and 110 over the last 4 regimes, that's been my fandom, right? Last season, when we thought, Mike McDaniel came in, we had Tyreek Hill, all of those things. Tua had a great season. Tua obviously was out for some of those games, but we ended up scraping into the playoffs at 9-8 after starting, and this is no joke, 8-3. We might have started 9-3, honestly. No, it was 8-3. It was definitely 8-3 because we won the last game to push us to 9. But a year ago today, basically, we were the exact same record. And here's what I'm saying. We're going into an easy stretch. That's what is different about this year. But what is going to stop us? And we haven't proven we can beat any good teams. If you are trying to combat that narrative right now, you are not a true Dolphins fan because you have not been through through hell and back with this team like everyone else. We have not proven shit. We are 8-3. We were 8-3 last season. We scraped into the playoffs at 9-8 and lost in the first round. I know we didn't have our starting quarterback, and that's tough, but mediocre. We've been mediocre not for just last season. We've been mediocre for 15 to 30 years. I honestly think 30 years. So my point is, going forward, we really need to hold our Dolphins to a very high standard. I believe that the same old Dolphins thing could happen again. I really, really would like to see us go 11-3, win a couple big games going into the playoffs, win at least one playoff game, or this is just going to feel even if it's a better record this season. Like, this is the most talented team we have had since I've been a Dolphin fan. And so that's been, 20 years. And if we don't end at least in the AFC Championship game, especially with Burrow out for the season, who is like the best playoff performer in the last 2 or 3 seasons, with the Bengals out, the scary, scary Bengals out, all we have in the AFC to worry about, especially with the Bills playing like shit, the only teams we have to worry about are the Chiefs, who they're beatable. They are not as good as they were. They were begging us to beat them in Frankfurt. We play them again. I think we beat the Chiefs, even in Arrowhead. And the Ravens. Those are the only 2 teams that you have to worry about. And if you don't end up in the AFC Championship game with the most talented team you've had in the last 20 years, you cannot say, well, that was a moral victory, boys. That's not the same old Dolphins. We won a playoff game. No more of that. For years and years and years, we've been mediocre to our core. Our organization has been mediocre to its core. And I just am sick of it. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox for a second there and go into the final portion of this, because obviously this is a solo show, so I'm not going to, bore you for more than 20 minutes. But we do have the Commanders this week, and like I said, the Commanders I think they're 4-9, something like that. They're sneaky good. I mean, like there's someone. Sam Howell has like top 3 passing yards in the entire NFL. They have Dotson. They have McLaurin. They have weapons. They do have weapons. It's not one of those teams that you really scare you. A lot of their defensive line prowess that they've had over the last 4 or 5 seasons, it's gone now. They traded Sweat. They traded I'm blanking, Chase Young. They traded 2 of their best defensive linemen. So really, we should beat these guys. It doesn't matter that we're in Washington. We should beat them really, really handily. It shouldn't even be a contest. And because honestly, we are built a lot like the Cowboys this year. We have a good defense, we have a good offense, and the Cowboys shat on them on Thanksgiving. That's exactly how this game should go. So I'm seeing this as a 34-10 victory. If anything else, it's a little bit disappointing. Anyways, what else is there? I guess to end the show, I will say that we made it back on Colin Cowherd's top 10 teams list. We're at number 8. I remember last week he had us at when we won and we made it to 7-3 against the Raiders. He didn't have us in the top 10, and it was this big news story because it's like, how do you not have the Dolphins in the top 10? That's like very disrespectful. He just has something against us. He's really anti-Tua. He is very, anti. I don't know. I honestly don't know, but definitely anti-Tua, and he has always been. And we've made it back into his top 10, so that's good. And we are at number 8. We'll see if when we finally beat a good team, I honestly predict we're going to pop that cherry against the Cowboys. I honestly think at home against the Cowboys is that perfect time to do so. I do not believe we can beat the Ravens, but maybe we could. Last thing. I wanted to say this. Right now, I want to look at the playoff picture and where we are. And I want to talk about what our road to the Super Bowl would be if we had to play a playoff game tomorrow. Because I think it is kind of interesting to look at these scenarios. So currently, right now, we are the 4 seed in the AFC. And it's honestly just because of the Jaguars has a better AFC conference record. Obviously, the Chiefs the Chiefs have that head-to-head victory over us. And then the Ravens actually have the first round bye, and that's partly because they are 9-3, which they have a bye this week, so everyone's going to catch up. But 9-3 are the Ravens. So I will say this. Our first round matchup would be against the Steelers. That would be ideal. If it ends up being the Browns, the Steelers, or the Colts, whoever it might be, if we end up with 2, 3, or 4, we just don't want to end up having to face the Bills a third time, because even if you want to count out the Bills and they've been shitty, they've also kind of been our daddy in every game we've ever played them over the last 5 years. I know it would be at home, and I know we beat Josh Allen last year in Miami, but it's just, we don't want to play them 3 times. We just don't want to do it. It's a rivalry, and it's, even if they're less talented than us, it would just be a scary opponent. I also saw that other people the other people were considering which teams people were considering scary and like not wanting to face them. Some other of those teams were, let me see. And I kind of concur with this. Like, there are some scary teams that we could play for the wild card that would be worse than playing. Like, I would rather play the Jaguars than I would want to play the Texans. And I don't know why that is, but just because I feel like there's really scary quarterback play when it comes to that surrounds C.J. Stroud, where he could put up 500 yards on us and we could lose like a shootout to a terrible Texans team. And I don't know. Trevor Lawrence just doesn't really scare me. I don't know what it is. But our first round would be against the Steelers or the Browns. Either of those teams, we crush them. We slaughter them. They don't have a good enough offense to keep up with us. Both of their defenses are their strengths. However, we played the Jets, who has arguably the best defense in the NFL, and it just didn't slow us down. We just have too good of an offense not to put up at least 28. And the problem with the Steelers and the Browns are they're not going to put up 28. They just won't put up 28. They do not have good quarterbacks. They do not have good offenses. So those would be ideal. So right now our road to the Super Bowl would be we'd have to beat those teams. We'd have to beat either the Steelers or the Browns. Right now it'd be the Steelers. Then we would have to play, let's see who it would be. Then we would probably have to play the Ravens to go to the AFC Championship. And in my opinion, Ravens in Baltimore in the cold, it would be tough. I would rather play the Chiefs. And I guess that a lot of this depends on how we play them this coming game in the regular season in Baltimore. Like, if we lose that game, then we can have a revenge game later. Sure, that would be awesome. But if we embarrass them and have to come back and play them again in the playoffs after a first round bye and a home field advantage, whatever it is, that would just be the worst. So, I don't know. That's about it. That's all I really got for you today. Like I said, about 25 minutes. I love you guys. I'm just really excited and scared for the rest of this season. See you when we're 10-3 next week, or 9-3 next week, and then 10-3, and then 11-3, and then our season, the end of our season, and the start of our playoff season begins. I love you guys. Jorge will be back next week. He had kind of like a cold and he couldn't talk, so I decided to do this solo. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.